Roster, please. I just joined the United Nations University 2 months ago. I got my PhD related to flood dynamics and interaction with the human being. But what is important is why I have started and have moved from forestry to hydrology, and why such hydrology? Well, because I got flooded. So in 2010, this is a normal situation of my village. I'm Italian. Do you know Venice? It's in the north and eastern part of Italy. Italy is in the Mediterranean basin in Europe. This is a normal sunny day, October 2010. But after a few days of rain, this was the situation. And consider that I live exactly under the river banks. So my family decided to live there because it was beautiful. There was a river and water is life. So what happened is that we lived a week with the civil protection agencies ready to evacuate us. But what happened then is that the municipalities dragged the dams into a nearby municipality to protect our village, and some fields were damaged because to save us. So since then, I started to question myself about these disasters and why they occur, and about their frequency all over the world, and why communities are prepared and sometimes not to face these disasters. So this is the other phase of water for sustainable development. Water scarcity, as Dr. Giulia Roder said, but this is when water is excess and can cause damages. So this is the trend from the Center for Epidemiological Disasters in Brussels that show that from 1900 to almost 2000, there has been a steep increase of the occurrence of disasters. And look, I'm not calling them natural disasters because the UN agreed that there is no natural in a disaster. They come from a natural phenomena. But now, the population and all the infrastructure made these events not natural anymore because we are suffering from those. After that, we can see a decrease in the occurrence, but still an increase of human and economic losses all over the world. And among all natural hazards and natural disasters, floods have affected more people than any other natural hazards in the last 20 years, and floods take the lead with more than 40% of all disasters occurred. But also, they have been take the lead for the numbers of people affected, with 2 billion of people just in the last 20 years. However, the number of deaths, of course, earthquakes have the major impact. So, how we can give this trend a meaning? What we can do? Why floods are one of the most impactful events all over the world, and what we can do? People, authorities, practitioners, farmers, your family, everyone. So I think preparedness. Preparedness is part of the solution and is part of the disaster cycle. So it means that the knowledge and the capacity of a lot of stakeholders acting in a society, not only us, communities are not the only answer and not only the solution either, to effectively anticipate, respond, and recover from the impacts of those events. So how we can do that? Basically, there are some structural and non-structural measures we can put in place to prevent and protect from these flood events. So structural measures are some engineering, construction, and solution we can build up to protect from these overflows of rivers or sometimes of excessive rainfall. They can be, barriers. We can elevate our houses, and there are very good examples in the Netherlands, in the northern Europe, because they are almost peatlands and they live in the river, they live in the sea, and they have constructed even natural engineering solutions, so using our vegetation, using our biodiversity, using our territory, by constructing some barriers, dams, dikes, and dunes. But what do you think? I mean, can be all this construction useful if we don't know how to deal with them? If we are not monitoring them, if we are not investing in those construction? So apart from these solutions, we can even need to implement non-structural measures. So in non-structural measures are all the measures involving not physical construction, whereas knowledge, practice, to reduce the risk, policies, laws, and public awareness campaigns and training and education. So people need to be involved in the response and in the preparedness from disaster. So how can we do that? So part of my PhD actually was to understand how people really can be involved in this process. Because how we perceived is our reality. How we feel that floods are affecting our life is something that can shape our way to protect from these events. So perception relates to the way we think, we feel, and we behave. So from a psychological perspective, we are touching three spheres that are the cognitive, the affective, and the behavioral. Because if you believe in something, you change your behavior. And if you feel that flood have major impact in your life, you might change and increase your protection measures. So to understand the perception of people, and so to organize events and increase awareness and all the practices to reduce the losses and be more prepared, we must answer the following question. So what kind of individuals in the community is made up for? They are all elders, they can't move, or they are all women, they are responsible for the water collection. Who they are? They are the old businessmen, or they are just moving, commuters, children, who they are. This is the base. But also, what are the factors that determines everyone's risk perception and attitudes? For example, trust. In Italy, we don't trust authorities. Okay? Because there is a long tradition. You might know about mafia and other political problems we got in the past. So that made us difficult to trust in authorities, and this translates us into do not rely on their activities. And so we are not prepared, and we are not investing in our protection. And so what can be done to enhance this proactive behavior and increase the awareness? So I just asked my mother, why did you decide to stay near the river? Just because it was beautiful? Have you ever imagined something of that kind might happen or might happen in the future? How will you protect in the future? You're going to rely on God, on yourself, on the government, on your peers. So I want to show you some of my examples that some of my studies I did before coming to the UNU. The first one is related to an indigenous community in Taiwan, where this is the right picture. So when we visit them, we understood they have a very special and peculiar history that shaped the way they are exposed and vulnerable to floods and also to landslides. So natural hazards are really common in Taiwan because of typhoons, and you have also cyclones, have you, right? And they may cause a lot of damages in some region. I just remember Cyclone Fani just some months ago. And the government of India, that phase, was really ready to call for an emergency and evacuated also more than 1 million people, if I'm not wrong. So it was very active, and people were active too because you were prepared. So the floods and landslides are critical issues for the government in the Central Mountain Range, but why for tribal people? Because during the colonizing people from the Dutch and then the Chinese and then the Japanese, they have forced them to relocate them from the mountain peak to the floodplain. So they have never experienced such disasters in the past. So it was something new. So the political decisions exposed them to disasters. And what happened also is that during the Japanese had to fly in the Second World War, and they needed wood to buy their ships. And they deforested pretty much all, some kind of a very good percentage of the forest there. So, and as you know, if there are some foresters here, if you cut the forest, if you deforest, even sometimes without any planning, you may cause and increase the probability of landsliding after a certain percentage of rain. So their history was really important to understand why now they are exposed to disasters and if they have a special knowledge to deal with them. So I just went there, interviewing them, interacting with them. I just stayed there and lived with them. I was an indigenous people for a month. So I just stayed with their religion communities, congresses. They are in the churches, and I listened to them, listened to their daily activities related to water and access of water. So what I found is that they had a very big awareness of these disasters. They are facing them now, and even their ancestors somehow even pass the message through all their children, but they somehow underestimate their physical damage, and they just say that they are worried for the village, not for themselves. And this is a problem, because when I ask them if they are prepared for any other future flood, they say no, we're not. Just on a scale from 1 to 5, just rated a mean value of 2. And this is not good for being prepared, because typhoons are really much frequent in Taiwan. So I would like to discover why there was this missing link between awareness, very high, but very few level of preparedness. So actually I found the answer in understanding about their communication and early warning system. So I asked them how and which is the source they got from early warning during floods or cyclone or typhoons, and just that 30% say that it was the community headman. In these communities, the headman is just a person that connects the community with the government. But we realize that the government, when it has to send a message also of early warning system, has to deal with the township administrative, the local chief, the volunteer patrol, and just at the end, the community. So Ren, this scientist, American one, in 1991, developed the social amplification of risk. So risk, so the message is decreased its efficacy as many transmitters it passed through. So this was the main problem. They were not prepared because of timing and because of effective messaging. We also discovered that they are a bit discouraged about what the government and the project they did in the community were undertaken, because they feel a bit detached, you know. They're tribal people, they feel another history, they feel to be another cultural belief and another habits, and they feel not part of the community. They have special rights and they have to fight for them. And when the government and some NGOs come there, they just change things. They don't really ask them what they think. They are not really including in the disaster management, and then they just go. This was one of the biggest problems we were facing. And I think sometimes also here in India might happen the same. And this is not inclusive. This does not increase a personal behavioral change and the community growth for development, for economic, and for secure also the personal well-being. Another interesting story that I have been studied is in Serbia. So Serbia was affected in 2014 by a very big flood, where the 22% of the whole Serbian population has been flooded. It was huge, 1.6 million of people in one time. But what happened is that at that time, female and male were affected differently. And why? because information did not reach women on time. So urgently the Ministry of the Environment and the Gender Equality of Serbia asked researchers from all over the world to investigate this, understanding which were the causes why women were most affected and died during that event, much more than men. So yeah, we just had this, and we interviewed 2,500 people during last year, and what we understood is that there were a very big difference between men and women perception and behavior because of their daily activities. So Serbian men served the army, and they were much more confident in dealing with emergency situations, whereas it's a patriarchal society, so women were relying on the house, they were just managing the field and the house and the child rearing, and sometimes they were not connected to the community. They couldn't not speak with anyone. They couldn't not increase their social networking. Thus, they were not informed. Thus, they were most affected during the time. We also understood that the reasons also why they weren't prepared is that they say that they have no time. So even if women were just housekeepers, I don't want to say just, because they have no time in dealing with other things. They are really burdening their daily routine, but they should have time to be prepared and to get access to education as you are, and to connect with other people and share the experience. Because there is a quoting saying, sharing is caring, but this is true. Because men have the opportunity at that time to share their experience and share also the burden after the floods, and women couldn't. So what we discovered also to help the government after this investigation was to how they want to be educated, which is the channel of communication and education. And men say to just rely on themselves and on friends and neighborhoods, whereas women rely even on TV, on governmental agencies. We trust more governmental authorities in Serbia, but as a women, and whereas men just rely on themselves. So we have to change a little bit this trend and help men to overcome gender stereotypes, be more included in their family decisions and in their organizations, and women to be more active in their decision-making process, into the political agenda, because their voices are really much important. And the last one, well, this is an example of the flood I have experienced. So, at the very end of my PhD, I was really interested in understanding my community perception, so why they failed in being prepared, and why a lot of people died during the time, and why in Western world we have no financial secure our houses, why we don't have an insurance to protect our houses that all the other, for example, European countries have, but also US, a very established one. So I just undertook 900 interviews by online, because I thought that in a developed country, all the people are connected with their phone. It was the most effective way to get their answers. And what I understood that in Italy, the social bonds are really important. So people have higher knowledge, came to their friends, their neighborhoods, people that they trust rather than the government. And this social trust was very much important because it also helped them in being prepared, but just in a very few examples. Because, as I said, trust is very low. So most of the people say that there is an erroneous management of economic resources for prevalence of interests. Or they said that the authorities are underestimating the problem. So I think that the trust is one of the key challenges to understand why people are not undertaking any protection measure and any insurance in our system. And I'm not sure if in the future there might be an opening for this kind of market if we don't build a culture of trust. So the 76.5% of people say that the cost was not convenient. You know, they're just saying that once in a while I'm going to have a flood. Why I have to pay every day of my entire life if I might have the probability? So this probability is not certain. We are not 100% certain, so why should I pay an early premium to save my property? And this is why exactly Kofi Annan, this is the General Secretary of the UN in 1991, said that prevention is invisible because are the disasters that never happen. And we have to build a culture of risk and educate people, otherwise our efforts would be managed. So after knowing all these kind of things and after being interacting with people, what we can do, what authorities can do, so they can have passive and active approaches and channels that can be used to communicate disasters and communicate their activities, everyone, every individual can do. Because even a little change can be transformed in a very big change, in a community change. So they can spread brochures, publication, organize workshop. You are in a workshop here, trying to learn more, understand. You're going to have the chance then to interact with each other and say, oh, I understood that, I have been flooded as well, what happened then? And you share your experiences. Be prepared in drills, preparedness trainings. Sometimes have been used even survival stories. I'm a survivor, and I'm telling you my story. And I could survive because the government decided for me to break the dam and just save my village. Sometimes to create some artificial memories, we can say some example here, so some statue, something that can every day you can see, Memorial Day, okay? You can remember the day if you can impress it into your calendar, or something physical like that, like entry in 1855, Chichi Earthquake Memorial Museum, I have been there, is massive, and there are still part of some buildings broken to show people what happened there and how many millions of people died during that event, or the Great Gulf Storm in Australia. You can even change the way you are communicating. You are a scientist, you will be the next scientist, the researchers of tomorrow, and the way you communicate is important. How people can understand a 2D maps with all sorts of risk and colors and very fuzzy words. But it has been seen that the public is not comfortable with that. We are all different. We have to understand the way we are different and target our messaging and our methods to increase awareness. Because, as I said, there is not a general public, and we need to create and to find all the difference between us and study them and create tailored management policies and momentum for dialogue. So this is, for example, a successful example in the Philippines, where the community has been involved in the decision-making process, and 54% of residents have been reduced their exposure to floods, and also the 36% of business. And this is huge. It seems that this percentage does not have really a meaning, but it has. There are numbers. There are people that secure their life and their economic activities, so it's development. So what is development? So I truly think that development is made up by three spheres. The environmental one, a very good environment, that lead to a higher health and secure our economic activities, in a continuous innovation and systemic change in the direction of sustainability. But it's not static. Okay, sustainability is dynamic. It's going to grow with us, and we can change direction, and we are always on time to change things. And I think sustainability is not dealing with the earth, because the earth is fine. I think sustainability is the survival of the humanity going forward, our children and your children's future. This is what today is at risk. So, Yeah, I hope this lecture cures not your sleep disorders. So thank you very much. You can find me here with these details.
అంత గట్టిగా టప్పట్లు పడతారు అంత క్వశ్చన్స్ కూడా అడిగితే ఇండియా నుంచి మెసేజ్ తీసుకెళ్తారు. ఎనీ క్వశ్చన్స్ ప్లీజ్ rise forward and feel free. So nothing is wrong. We keep saying when there is a right and wrong, wrong and right. No, there is no right without wrong.
Hello ma'am, my name is Nargis of MSc Aquaculture. I have a doubt. Can we use chlorinated tablets for polluted water?
I think that the expert is coming next. I think that the expert of that is coming next. But I'm not dealing with polluted water and about chemicals, but probably Saraj, you can answer.
I think it's difficult to answer one yes or no. But what kind of chlorinated tablet? I think it may be costly for both bones to eat with the chlorine, and they may have other chemical reactions that can have beer. So it's maybe I need to study, but in single word it's difficult to.
What I want to say about pollution is that when you have a flood and your water is polluted, where the water is going to go? In the fields you're going to grow, where your animals can eat chickens, and you're going to eat them. And the circle of pollution comes to you again. So wherever you pollute, it comes to you again. So you can use chemicals to reduce it, but it's the way you change your mind that somehow it can help you and can secure the community welfare. I'm sorry if I couldn't understand.
Okay ma'am, you have described in a very nice manner.
Okay.
You feel better and good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions, please?
You can send me an email wherever you want.
But did you? Anyway. Any questions now from economics? No, because it's a general workshop and we'll answer later. Otherwise, keep questions for the next presentation to complete and you can ask it.
Thank you.
Anyway.